First speaker that I'd like to introduce is Ahila Narilanathan. He was an NDT champion in 1992 and the runner-up in 1993, so he got a little bit worse between those 2 years. His first job was with the ACLU in New York, where he worked on immigrant rights and national security issues. He was a federal public defender in El Paso, Texas. But for the last 12 years, he's worked for the ACLU primarily on immigrants' rights and national security issues, in his words, quote, mostly by suing the federal government. Recipient of a MacArthur Genius Award, and he's currently the Advocacy and Legal Director of the ACLU in Southern California. Let's give him our attention for 2 or 3 minutes.
Can everybody hear me in
Yes.
the room? Is that okay? At the back? Thanks very much for inviting me, John. John was saying that, you probably haven't heard my name since you struck me on the judges list very long time ago. I was like, why would you think that I struck you all that time ago? Actually, my last college debate was in 1993, so I'm an old guy in this room, but it's great to be here. And I guess the main thing I would, John asked me first to say, like, do you have thoughts about things that you would tell to a bunch of, a room of a bunch of debaters? So honestly, I didn't think a lot about what I was going to do after debate until after debate. During the time that I was in it, I focused a lot on debate and wasn't really thinking a ton about my career. And I think that was probably, it did me pretty good in the sense that all the time, in whether I'm arguing in court or talking to policymakers, talking to detained immigrants, whatever it is, I find that many of the very basic ways of thinking and skills about speaking and things like that I learned in debate are still there, still with me. I was arguing a case in the Supreme Court a few weeks ago, and I was writing down what was being said in, do people still flow? Yeah. That's how I was doing it, just like that, in the same kind of way. And those thoughts, those kind of modes of thinking and sort of habits of thought really do serve you really well, for later. Most of what I do now is actually, in the subject areas, most of what I work on are immigrants' rights and national security, those two issues. National security obviously being a very problematic term. A lot of my work on that side is representing people in the Muslim community. I don't do as much of, there's also a lot of work done on targeted killing and things like that. I don't do as much of that. A lot of it's on like the way the FBI surveils Muslim communities, the no-fly list and things like that. And then my work on detained immigrants, a lot of it is, because we have this something like a parallel prison system for immigrants. And on any given day, like today, there will be about 40,000 people who will sleep in an immigration detention center tonight without having been through a trial. So it's like a form of imprisonment without trial that is really operating entrenched now in our legal system in a very kind of significant way. And so a lot of my work there is just trying to change the way that system operates to make it a little bit more fair. In terms of like systemically, like John said is basically right. A lot of my work is suing the federal government, working in big teams of other lawyers at the ACLU and at a bunch of other nonprofit human rights organizations. We also do a lot of work with private law firms who assist us in doing that work. I also do some amount of legislative advocacy, like trying to, when you have more sympathetic legislators or administrations, trying to get them to change their policies and kind of the way they work in those areas without having to go to court, without having to sue them. And then also a lot of work in media. And I don't myself do a lot of organizing, but I work with a lot of organizers because as you've seen probably in the last, for those of you who are following things closely since the election, sometimes actually a huge amount of the power to produce social change comes from people mobilizing in the streets and actually just like, activism. I don't want to say a whole lot more. I look forward to all of your questions, and thanks very much for having me.
Our second speaker is a former recipient of the Best of Forensics Award at this term. He was in fact the first ever recipient. It's DeWitt Lacey, formerly San Francisco State. He went to the Golden Gate Law School. He won the International Academy of Trial Lawyers Most Outstanding Litigation in 2005. He wrote the Elizabeth Byrd Award, second place in the National Mock Trial Competition, and best speaker in the mock trial competition. He's a member of the California Association of Black Lawyers, the San Francisco African American Democratic Club. He's a former candidate for public office. He works with clients from Richmond and Oakland, California, all the way down to San Diego. The cases he works on includes wrongful death at the hands of police. So if you have taken an interest in the Black Lives Matter hashtag, he's the guy in the courtroom representing the defendants to hold the public agencies accountable. He also fights against, has worked on cases where he's fighting against discrimination against an openly gay police officer. I'll ask him to come up. Ladies and gentlemen, DeWitt Lacey.
Thanks for having me. My name is DeWitt Lacey. It's great to see San Francisco State in the house. Right on. I haven't been here on this campus in a while, but I did debate for San Francisco State some time ago. A lot of the work that I do today deals with trial advocacy in the realm of police brutality and or discrimination in hiring and firing. Of course, a lot of these issues came to light over the last few years, starting with Ferguson and on down even through some of the more recent cases. Today, I represent the family of Mario Woods, of Luis Gongora Pat in San Francisco, also Christian Pena down here in LA, and a number of others, okay? These are real issues that you guys talked about here. And there is impact to what you're doing here, because you guys go on from here to pursue different jobs and careers that influence our daily lives. So keep doing what you're doing. I really look forward to talking with you more. I'm really excited about being here and the opportunity to discuss with you, because I learn things from you just as you might learn something from me. So I really appreciate the opportunity to be here and look forward to further conversations.
All right. And the third speaker is the one most wondering what's going on right now. Is not a former debate person, but
yes, I am.
oh, you are. All right. All right. Well, be short. Let's go here. Other press credentials, but is a frequently cited author in our community. This is Professor Dylan Rodriguez of the University of California. He's published 2 books and over 4 dozen academic articles and book chapters. He's an editor or an editorial board member for numerous journals and presses, including the University of California Press. He's a founding member of the Critical Resistance Beyond the Prison Industrial Complex and the Critical Ethnic Studies Association. He's worked alongside various social movements and activist collectives for more than 20 years. I think he is a self-described public intellectual. He's currently the chair of the Department of Ethnic Studies at UC Riverside and was recently elected by all the faculty on the campus as the chair of their academic senate. A round of applause for Professor Dylan.
I was a debater when I was a kid in high school. I didn't make it to college. I was a Lincoln Douglas debater. I wanted no part of you all. I was one little taste of your policy people. I said I want nothing to do with that. Thank you, Professor John Bruschke, for inviting me to this event. I think I should probably come to this every time it's held here. Yeah, I mean, it feels too good for me to only be coming here every few years. So I wanted to share with you a couple paragraphs from a book that I'm laboring to write, because I know that the energy that I get from gatherings like this will be the only thing that will ever enable me to finish it with decency. So hang with me for just a couple paragraphs. I think this resonates with the moment that we're in, and I think the spirit of our sitting here together. So in this time, some clarification is in order, because nothing seems to be the same, even while for some of us it's absolutely familiar. Supremacy is an inherently armed and threatened regime. It must be reiterated, fortified, and violently enforced, usually across a broad, deep spectrum of violence, from genocidal to low intensity, couple symbolic, to physiological and environmental. There's little doubt that white supremacy is the convening animus of the United States of America and most of the Western world, and that its liberal disavowals in the era of diversity and official multiculturalism not only fail to displace white supremacy's paradigmatic role in defining social life and the distribution of wealth, poverty, health, and systemic suffering, but actually instigate white supremacist revivals at every conceivable social scale. The argument here is not that white supremacy has disappeared or faded from the ensemble of racial social power assembled over the last half-century, but rather that it has been incessantly disowned by white being as such, even as white supremacy galvanizes and organizes white publics into organized and semi-organized fronts for white self-defense, white autonomy, and white rights. The ascendancy of white being supervises the logic of what we might call white reconstruction. It disciplines and reforms classical white supremacist institutions and their methods of human domination, while still ensuring that white supremacy permeates the order of things. In this way, the end of official apartheid, I'm talking about American apartheid, and the formal elimination of particular forms of racial colonialism are maneuvers of sustainability. More precisely, toward a flexibility of racial power and suppleness of racial being that can absorb anti-racist reform for the sake of human equality, precisely because the white being's ascendancy already assembles the material boundaries, the methodology, and the common sense preconceptions of the human who is to participate in that egalitarian social wager. Oh, y'all got that, huh? I'm almost done. The reconstruction is, in one form, a comprehensive scramble to reconfigure white supremacy in the age of its nominal official disavowal as such. There is, in other words, an invitation of sorts to thrill in its fiction, which is to say, to fantasize something like a people of color future within the ascendancy, even when material conditions yield palimpsest of degradation and humiliation within the allegations of the egalitarian. This is why something like eugenics, for example, is simultaneously an embarrassment to modern biological and forensic science, while obviously persisting as a structuring logic of contemporary social engineering from its liberal reformist to reactionary racist variations. On the other hand, rebellions and movements have many points of origin, as my co-panelists, co-speakers have already named it. The high school and the college classroom, the church, the mosque, the temple, the community organization, the warehouse, the prison cell, the hospital waiting room, y'all's living room couch, the apartment complex, are all as likely as any site to bear the fruit of social insurgency among people who refuse to be passive victims or willing participants in an oppressive system. These forms of action do not necessarily rely on massive numbers to make their imprint on the surrounding world. Rather, they pivot on the willingness of committed collectives of people, large and small, to analyze, strategize, and act on their surrounding social conditions. Such collective work, often beginning with numbers in the single digits, has shown the capacity to accomplish everything from stopping patterns of domestic violence in an apartment complex and disrupting citywide police violence, to sparking anti-colonial revolutions and overthrowing repressive national governments. This is your job. This is our job. Thank you.